Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you, and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. Let me start by thanking MLR for coming through on the Cash App. Not just for me, but for many content creators. S. Jock for coming through on Cash App and with links. Armando for coming through on Cash App, Mr. Dickerson, and every other Cash App donor. Gail Knight has come through multiple times, and I do appreciate that. Let me state this right quick, if I may. On Fresh and Fit's channel, they uploaded, and I also I need to give shouts out and thanks to the Manosphere Telegram group, and that includes Don Calypso, for coming through with a lot of links that keep us aware. On Fresh and Fit's podcast or channel, there's a link in which his so-called traditional wife tells on herself. She has, I think a husband that lives in the middle of nowhere, she said, but she travels frequently. And so when she hooks up, she tells him, and either he accepts that or he leaves. And there was a commentator underneath that video that worked in law enforcement against human trafficking, similar to Myron Gaines' own past, working federal law enforcement against human trafficking. This LEO explained the following. He said, he told us that this is what happened. There are cases where ladies wind up being victims who can't tell you who committed the crime against them. So you know what the crime is. They can't tell you who committed it, not because a guy was wearing a mask or she was wearing a mask. They can't tell you because they can't talk. That's what I mean. When they work these cases, a lot of them wind up being cold cases, but they discover that these women were leading multiple guys on at the same time. So what this means is that this is a common behavior, which is why they're finding it commonly in the victims whose passings away they have to investigate. That's what they deal with. This means, gentlemen, that you are walking by women on the sidewalk, from the parking lot to your job, the car dealership, in the subways, at the bus stops. You are walking by women who do this. They lead on multiple guys. And not only that, but they actually wind up becoming the biggest SLUTs when they have husbands or somebody committed to them. They, once they get that kind of security, then they really go around just, pleasing guys they otherwise would not have been pleasing. This is an issue and this is a problem. Of course it is, but these guys, this LEO guy, this law enforcement guy said, they become cold cases, but they still find this. Now, as to whether it was one of those guys that did it or which guy that did it, that's what they may or may not be able to find out. It changes from case to case, I understand. But this woman sat up and said on the podcast that her husband lives out in the middle of nowhere. But she's going to do this. When I saw the man's comment, and then I read the comment right before she said that he lives out in the middle of nowhere, and I thought, this is a setup. And I don't want that man to ever be proven guilty. In the event that she does go back and gets in his face one day and says that, and then, bunch of she's really gone. She's just gone, and no human being's gonna know what happened. I don't support crimes against men or women. It's not that. But the thing is that I also don't think that a legal system that is not going to penalize women when they abuse men, and I mean really abuse men, has any business penalizing men. The legal systems have to penalize whoever commits abuse and violence, period. The thing is, this legal system not only doesn't, well, it'll penalize whoever's proven to have committed it, but women have to go a lot further to get the same penalty. They got to be more violent to get the same penalty. The other thing too is that the legal system and the culture will tell men if she's cheating, it's your fault, and then it'll turn around and tell men if you cheat, it's your fault. You're demonized. They're not. I tell you not to approach women in the West because of that. You are walking past ladies that are doing this. You may be invisible to them, and that's insulting coming from them, but it's still a blessing for you that you're invisible, because you're walking by them and the things they are doing are beneath anything you would ever want your sister to do regarding men. And you hope your sisters aren't doing it. I'm not going to tell you that they're not. I hope not, but I can't tell you that they're not. You can tell me. However, you are walking by a plethora of women daily that are doing this. And I say to you, do not approach women in the West, because in many cases, you are the guy they will either string along and lead on, or just outright refuse to even do that much. You are rarely the guy with whom she's going to fool around. It is not your fault that you aren't, but you have to understand that you may still be driven to hatred. And when you are driven to hatred and your hatred gets to the point where it thinks for you, you then become you become easily provoked to do wrong and easy to catch for the wrong you've done. It is better to stay the hell away from them. Many of you have already been through a red pill rage stage. I think Anton of the Lapeef show has had to go through this. And I'm not the only one that thinks so. They have really red pilled him, haven't they? And there's a part of me that wants to even say to Anton, too little, too late. We told you before. But then I also do understand that men telling you what women are doing is not the same as women showing you what they are doing. One is evidence and the other one is proof. So to that regard, I do understand. But there's a 180-degree turn for him. I'm telling you this because while he's married, statistically speaking, he was almost not married, not even through any fault of his. It's not something wrong with him. Same thing for many of you. And if you make approaches in the West, your experiences, because they're going to see to it, they're going to make sure of this. Your experiences, if you make approaches in the West, are going to turn you angry and hateful. And if you've already been through the red pill rage stage, you don't need it again. Already they've taken your rage and they've said, you just mad because, and they bring up asinine, childish points. And the real truth is that you are mad not because of what they wanted. You're mad because of the lies about it and because of the lengths to which they've gone to lie. And many of you are even mad at mom because she participated in the damn lie by omission or commission. Most of them having participated by omission. I don't know how many moms have participated in the lie by commission. I'm not sure. But I do know that many moms are in on it. They don't want to equip even their sons with the right knowledge. They want to keep sitting up and saying, well, you know, some of these girls, some, I ain't saying all, but some, and what they don't have the decency to tell you is most of them, more than half of them, more than 70% of them, if they can get away with it. They don't have the decency to tell you. The environment is not going to stop them from doing it, so the majority of them are going to do whatever's wrong. They don't have the decency to say to the sons, most of you males are not going to be whom they want, but they will use you. And the men they want will use them. And they will know this, and they will try to use you to pay for what they're not getting from the men that they actually want. They won't tell even their sons these things, and you have been left to try to figure it out on your own. You've been left to become a psychic and just understand it with no guidance and no input. And that's where your rage really begins, and rightfully so. The gaslighting and more lies, of course, are going to compound that rage. They did, for those of you that went through this already. Guys like the boogeyman, and I'm not going to forgive him for this, from Baltimore, no Shan, that dude. I'm sorry, the booger man. To whom I have not listened in years, proudly so, and would not know if he has changed for the better or for the worse since maybe 2019, certainly 2020. That guy, yeah, him. He sat up and said, one of the last times I listened to him, that women are wearing a mask and it rarely comes off, and very few men see underneath the mask, and most men would burn cities down if they saw underneath the mask. That means that we should have never built them for these broads. Deception is an act either of peacemaking or of war, usually war. They have been engaging in deception nonstop since the West has been the West. Traditional women are actually very silent about many things. I don't appreciate that in them either. But at least they might open up to the husband in private. That I do appreciate. But we know the Western women are lying to the single man, to their own husbands, to their dads, hell, to their sons. What made the booger man so unique was that when he saw underneath the mask, he did not have the decency to call them out, all of them, for wearing the dot-gam mucking fask. He instead turned them in and said, see, you need to be ready to see what I'm seeing. Would I tell you to burn cities down? No, I would tell you to lock them out and give them nothing. Lion of MGTOW was the first I heard to articulate this that way. Shouts out to him. He's been helpful. But you are not to forgive them for wearing this mask. This has actually messed up the quality of human beings that have been conceived and then raised. Deception for them has been an act of war, and in this war, they have lowered not only the quantity of black people overall, especially black males that have been birthed and born and raised, they have lowered the quality by reproductively boycotting men that would have raised the quality, or by keeping custody from these men with the help of Zaddy. So don't let Zaddy off the hook either. And don't let Becky off the hook. She's been on it. Dave Chappelle was right. She was in on the heist, she just didn't like her cut. I tell you not to make approaches in the West because of the rage to which it will subject some of you and resubject others of you. Don't do it. Are they going to approach you? If they don't, then leave them by themselves. Eventually, they will realize they have to. Simone Biles has shown that the woman who makes the approach is probably going to wind up being the happier woman. And this is why it is that the sisterhood is mad at her. She taught them a lesson, the truth for one, but she taught them a lesson that they knew was true, but they never wanted anybody to admit, and she came along and didn't even hide it. I go for what I want. She said it. She was the one that says, I messaged him first. She said that before he did, and he said, yeah, that's true. Yeah, she wasn't scared. He even turned that. Jonathan Owens turned Simone Biles' admission and bringing up that she messaged him first into a positive. She wasn't scared. He was showing respect for her, and yet and still the sisterhood is cackling and demonizing him. And they're going to go after her next, calling her the modern day version of the N-word lover, which is pick me. And that's the nice version of it. Because the deception to them is of utmost paramount importance. The lying. And in reality, what they like is disgusting as hell, and that is morally outrageous to me. But most of you still were so gracious that you were not pissed off about what they like when you became red pill aware, but about the deception. Why do they have to lie about it? Why do they have to hide it? And this is why I've said what I said to that Happy Wife School podcast. I admire your introspection, ma'am. I really do. And for that, I want God to bless you and your husband with a good marriage. But I'm going to tell you, ma'am, you like to sit up and say, well, passports aren't the answer. No, they're not the answer. They're just the means to the answer. The international flights are the beginning of the answer. The boarding passes are another means to the answer. The bags are a means to the answer, but the answer is the repatriation. And I know you're a white wife talking to all men, not just black men, but I'm talking about black men. And what you said was directed at all men when you said, we all us women are the same. No, you're not. You aren't the same woman now on the podcast that you were before. You admitted that the woman you were before was a conniving bitch to her husband that didn't deserve it. I'm not saying this to be mean and insulting. I'm talking about what you said. You didn't use the words conniving bitch to characterize it. You didn't have to. That's what you were, according to what you've said. You had nicer terms to say that. You're not that woman now. Unless you get offended. You are not that woman, but, well, mostly you're not, but you set up and you have slipped in one way. You are not going far enough. Because you have said that the men should stay in the West where the women can give in to the worst aspects of their nature. And that's not good advice. I mean, you did say, I'm not telling you can't go here, you can't. I'm telling the men that they must go to certain places. Because the women that are traditional are not the same as you. Not because of the wants and the wishes and the desires, but because of the decisions. That's what makes human beings as moral or immoral as we are, our decisions. Western women are making immoral decisions. Therefore, they are less moral than traditional women that are making more moral decisions more often. Y'all are not the same. If your natures are the same, just like men's natures are the same, so what? We're making different decisions. This is different. And this is the difference. It is nice of you to attempt to be honest and to tell the men, listen, we have the same instincts. The right thing to say is we have the same instincts. That would have been the right thing to say, but you have to admit the cultures aren't the same. And maybe what you fear is your good husband finding out that he would have, maybe you fear him finding out that he should not have tolerated and waited for you to grow the up like you did. Maybe you fear him finding someone that is younger. Maybe not. But there are other women who have become self-aware, but they waited until they were a certain age to do it. They didn't do it when they were young, and they need to face the fears that their husband will find out that some women that are still young can make moral decisions regarding men and not be conniving bitches, emasculating. Understand this. If every woman in the world decides that she's going to emasculate her man, if years ago women could have done this all over the world and we men would not have had a way to know that this was wrong, except that the men in those other countries would have said this is new. We would not have known. But now we've been able to compare notes. We can look back at videos that people have put up 20 years ago, and we can compare how things are now to how they were back then. And at this point, there's not a way that women can easily all get together around the world and decide we're going to all be emasculating. We're all going to be abrasive and mean so that the men don't know any better. That's not going to work anymore. As it is, Western women have tried to say we're all going to be OnlyFans models and sex workers and Instagram models, and these men are not going to have any other options and they're not going to know any better. And to a certain extent, the residual effects of that are that there are many men that still don't know any better, but the pendulum has swung the other way, and now men are finding out that there is better. So the residual effects are not permanent. They're dwindling. And more women are now winding up by themselves and aging into old age and infirmity without any kin. And people know that that's going to get more so like that. That there will be more women that will have to go into nursing homes as they get older. There are already a bunch of men that have had to go into nursing homes as they've gotten older. But there will be more women that will have to go into nursing homes as they get older. We know this. Shout out to Don Calypso for sending that link to me too. For sending it to us. The reason for that is because these women did not want to be honest with men, and they did not want to have to listen to a man. And even for women like you at the Happy Wife School, if you cannot tell young women of the West to de-Westernize and act exactly like the traditional third world pick-me B words that they think women in these countries are, that they should grow old by themselves with no one to look after them. That's what the wuck should happen. They should have to sit in an adult diaper that's full for 2 hours before a nurse is available to come around and take care of them. Clean them up. And if that nurse's back hurts because she's had to pick up 7 other old folks to clean them up, so be it. Then she's going to have to sit down and rest before she tears the ligament in her back. Because why should she? Without any help. Why? It's just simply put, governments and private corporations are going to have to offer really good salaries to nurses for them to go into this field, enough to take care of these old folks, because frankly, this is what the women requested. Good. No more telling men that all of the women are going to behave the same way. You can tell men that these are the instincts, but even then, if all women decided to follow and obey these instincts, we will just leave them be at this point. Because women already taught men, while not being willing to admit that men can live alone and without women. Women have forced men to learn this. So we can. It's not natural, it's not the best and the healthiest, but we can do it. We've had to. We're finding out now that, generally speaking, half of men have to throughout human history or more. A student of mine 2 years ago told me that one of his uncles recently passed away. This uncle had never been married, and he was admiring the uncle's self-control. And I said to him, to tell the truth, that's actually not very rare. There are many men who pass away and they never married and never had kids. Actually, many men that pass away like that. It's not normal and healthy. I mean, it's not natural and healthy, but it happens more often than what we think. About 50%, because women don't want most of the men they see. They don't have to want them. They just need to be honest about it. So now the men know if all the women in the world are going to be corrupted, then bye to all of them. It's up to women. But gentlemen, I tell you not to make approaches in the West, because every single time a man approaches someone in the West, even if she's not Western, how does he know until he meets her? That sends a message, that sends a signal to all the ladies around. We can stay how the F we are, ucked, fucked, jacked up, slutty, but still picky. The worst of both, best of neither one. We can be all of these things, spoiled, useless, and we can still find someone. Women are complaining about not being approached, and they should. Finally, more and more men are doing the right thing. So for those of you that have not gotten on board yet, get started. Which is easy to do. Just don't, not approaching is an inaction. Just be too lazy to make approaches. Do like them. Go after everything else you want in life except them. You set up and watch them do it. We sat up and watched these ladies go after everything else they want in life except the men they want. Then turn around and go after the men the other women want because they don't feel embarrassed and ashamed to do it and get used by them. We sat up and watched that happen. Let them see you doing this. Go after everything else in life but the ladies that look nice to you. And then work even harder. Get your stuff. Save your bread, your stacks. Get a skill you can take somewhere else. Learn the countries, go elsewhere, and then you can approach one of those women, because even if she ain't interested, she's not mad at you because you were. She's not calling you all kind of B's and MFs and creeps and police, security, come get this dude because you said, excuse me, you got a minute? You single? And even then, I'm only telling you to make approaches for marriage, but you can go places where that's worth it. That's what you can do, and I would recommend it. Yeah. So, when I tell you don't make approaches in the West, it has everything to do with that. That lady that bragged on the Fresh and Fitz podcast is considered a hero to many women in the West. You don't know how many women in the West heard her say that, or heard some other woman say it in another context and said, yes, this is great. You think this is, and don't think this is really something new, to be honest with you. It's not. No, it's not. There is, I guess she's still alive. There's this actress. She was a dirty movie actress a long time ago. This is before I became Muslim. I think 99. She gave an interview. And in the interview, she said that her her male talent that worked with her could not lay down with anybody else. She said, I screw who I want, but he only gets to screw me. If he sleeps with somebody else, he's out of a job. That's what this woman said, and she's a dirty movie actress. But she wanted to keep tabs on that male talent. Now, he later on said that when he was battling with cancer, she was there with him. So he has this loyalty to her. And that was something that was said in an interview more recently. The interview was actually, you don't have to find it on any bad magazines or bad websites. It was on YouTube. But I remember decades ago, when I wasn't Muslim, and I read the interview. And I thought to myself, is this what the hell many of them want? Because how's she going to respect this man? She sat up and said something like this: if he accepts it, she will never respect him. She'll never respect a man like that. And she may not. I knew that back then that most women would not. And what you gentlemen must understand, I'm only telling you this to make you understand that this is not new. Now, when he was sick, she stayed by him, trying to encourage him to recover and that sort of thing. He said that she did support him. And I'm mentioning this because I want you to realize that this, I want you all to understand that it's only gotten worse since then. So it was already worse than what we thought 20 years ago. Now it's even worse. So now this generation will sit up and say, well, I do who I want. He better not do nobody else. You know she can't respect him if he agrees to his terms. You already know that. And if anything bad does happen, she's not even visiting him in the hospital. For what? That's what you have to understand, gentlemen. Making approaches in the West means that you put him, there's really no better deal than what I just described to you. In the West, that's it. There's nothing else. There is no better deal than this. For one, a security guard left a comment, and I replied to that earlier, and this was under, I forgot which video under which it was. But it was a security guard saying that many times he would have to step up and give statements to police or others because he saw women being aggressors in clubs. He's a bouncer, I think. And he would see women being aggressors in clubs, starting stuff with men. And he would have to step up and say, no, actually, she started this fight with this guy. That told me that women out here starting fights with men in clubs because they don't like them. Because he's not her type and he said something to her. Starting fights in clubs because they are hoping that they can get everybody to beat the dude up. And this guard said that sometimes he had even seen men killed because of things that women said they had done and they didn't do them. That's what's waiting on you right now. If you're not the one that they want so badly that they'll come climb your balcony and share you with other women, if you're not that dude, then they don't care what they do to you. Especially once they can't get any more benefits out of you, any more of whatever it was for which they were using you to begin with, and they were probably using you. So once they can't, they don't care what they do to you. And as a matter of fact, when they're sitting at the hair salons and other places where it's just women and no men, they might be clowned if they say that they were just done with you so they dropped you. They could get clowned for that because they don't have a story about something they did to you. They're socially pressured and incentivized to not just drop you when they find you useless, but to do something to you for ever becoming useless. Girl, but that dude that was paying your rent, oh, he lost his job, girl. Well, what did you do? What you mean? I dropped him. And what? Dropped him in what? Yeah, I dropped him. I don't know where he is now. I don't talk to him. Girl, you could have done something to teach him a lesson. Teach him a lesson for losing his job? Yeah, girl, that's how these conversations go. Yeah, girl, it's his job to keep a job so he can pay your rent. That's what he's supposed to do. Oh, girl, I got all these other men. Well, his job was to pay the rent. You believe he just lost his job? Girl, he just ain't want to pay that rent no more. Tell him to get back on his job. And that's my saying that is a nice version of how I imagine the conversation going. You make approaches in the West and there's nothing else waiting, nothing better waiting on most of you. I'll put it like this. If you're one of the guys that they like so much they're going to share you with other women, then that means you're already being approached. That's what that means. If you're not being approached, you're not going to be offered a good deal should you make an approach in the West. Say nothing. And as Lionel McTow would say, shout out to him, lock them out, give them nothing. Host denies, parasite dies. So, and my father, who grew up in a very dry, physically dry environment. It was not woodlands. And as the descendant of some of the first black cowboys in the U.S., my father said to me when I was younger, and I was growing up on the very hot and humid Gulf Coast with lakes and swamps and bayous and a lot of rain. He told me, he said, I don't know what the people here would say to try to teach the same lesson. But in the Southwest where I grew up, we all knew something in those deserts. We knew the horse dies, the rider dies. He told me this when I was an adult. I was already a husband and father. And he told me this because he was trying to get me to understand was that if I didn't take care of myself and I overexerted and exhausted and denied myself in my quest to be a good husband and provider, good black man, good enough for my wife to say that I was such, then I was just going to wind up dying. And then, well, so what about my widow? But my daughter and son would have suffered. That's what he was trying to tell me. And I'm saying the same thing to you. It's dry and it's a desert now in this economy, but you're the horse. You can make it. If you find water, you can. If the rider, being the women in the West, can't help you to find more water or find your way out of the desert, then foot the wuck, Why? What they'll do is they will put you in a position to die, even if it means they're going to die, just because they think that your job is to die trying to get enough for them. As a matter of fact, they think it is your job, not only dying trying, it is your job to die getting enough for them so that you do the work, you come back to them, you hand it to them, and then you drop dead from exhaustion, and they just get to spend what you've earned. And then it's on to the next, and that's how they feel about you. or you're invisible and they don't notice you, which makes you even luckier. That's why they have not only the Lie to Me economy, shouts out to the Reverend Brother Bishop Pastor Deacon Dr. Hurricane Edward Allen Anderson. But that's why they also have the accusation economy, which Dr. Tiasan Johnson has pointed out. They have this because they believe that it is your job to get out there, bust your behind, and try to earn. And when you finally get a bag, they believe that that bag is theirs to take. It is yours to earn, but theirs to take and spend and go on to the next one. They believe that it is their job to never work for the bag they demand out of life. And that's what's waiting on you if you make these approaches in the West. Don't do it. Do not do it. Some say, well, there are some good women in the West, and I'm in a rare position to meet them. You might be. Let me ask you this, though. If you're already in my audience, chances are you do want to be able to afford a life outside of the West at some point, and should want to. Next question. Even if you find that good woman in the West, is she going to be willing to leave the West with you when y'all finally have a bag? I'll give you a hint. Happy Wife School. That's the name of a channel. I already mentioned her previously. Do you think she'd be willing to leave the West, even as a reformed and good wife? Do you think she'd be willing to leave the West? No. If you do marry a good woman in the West, that's who you're going to wind up with. Still not willing to leave the West, even when you need to do that for purely financial reasons, not necessarily even to start a family. She will not be willing to leave the West, even if the West corrupts her daughter, your daughter. Oh, they got plenty of ladies out here that are bad and had good mothers. They still grew up in the West. Their mothers, though good, were not willing to say, I'm going to move somewhere where the average income is less so that she has some sense in her in the event that I passed away and she won't listen to me. Even the good women of the West were not willing to go that damn far. So don't approach them either. If they're really good and they appreciate the good in you, they'll come approaching you. And if they're excellent, they will follow you outside of the West. And if they're stellar and exemplary, then they will be already outside the West when you land in a traditional area, and they will be traditional. And they will have left the West to become that. And that's not something I've ever heard of happening. I hope that what I've said has been a benefit, and thank you for bearing with me for so long. As always, black art, black crime, blackout, assalamu alaikum, and black heterosexual, non-select male power just because they don't like it, and black patriarchy until extinction of Judgment Day. Thank you again for flying with us here on Jet Black Airways, where jet black is also a verb. Keep jetting black with us until the wings and the wheels fall off, and as I've stated before, this time I will ask you, on your way out of the Jet Black aircraft after we dock at the gate, do press the Cash App button on the way out, but only punch in numbers that are easy for you, and save some so that you can press the link to the merchandise and get at least one t-shirt or one sweatshirt as well. Gender, justice, forever.